Welcome everyone, welcome back, and this time welcome to Norma as well. Hi Norma. Norma,
Hello, hi. Yes,
yes.
yes.
Norma is going to be one more person who will say Pooja has harassed me.
I was about to say that because I heard the last speaker say, "Mujhe fasaya isme." So I think I have also got fassaud into this, but I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah, so I'm liking my newfound skill of fassaing people. But I think this is, a very this is a moment of celebration for everyone because this is the award ceremony, and there has been a long list and a short list, and the jury has looked into it. So there's been a lot of buzz around this, even on social media, and I think it's also because somewhere it's been a very exciting lineup. So we took books from 2019 as well as 20, because of the pandemic, and what's been interesting is the kind of diversity of writing there is, for environmental writing in terms of nature. And actually, the credit goes to one of my colleagues, Megha, for thinking that given this diversity, we should not just award one book as it's done in most, literature festivals. We should at least have something like an honor list because it allows us to, like not say an apple is better than an orange, right? So yes, and yeah, so I'm not going to take too much time. I'll just tell you all a little bit about Norma, although I'm sure most of you already know her. So Norma is an environmentalist. She's a lawyer. She's a social worker. She is a founding member of the Goa Foundation, and she has argued, and this is where I think it gets really big. She has argued around 300 PIL cases for Goa's NGOs and citizen groups, and I mean it's just unimaginable, how you've done it and how you continue to do it. So there have been times when I'm coordinating with her and she's in court and she's like, Pooja, stop harassing me. That's right. That's why I knew she's going to say, Pooja harasses. She like, okay, enough you've asked me, enough we've discussed. I'm in court. I need to actually get back to that. So yes, 300 PIL cases is no joke. She's also the chairperson for FIAPO. And thanks to that platform, I met her for the first time. And she's the founder of Other India Bookstore and Other India Press. And for those of you who don't know, all of these are, creds and these are things you will know, but she's also a very good storyteller. And I'll tell you a very little story before, I get her to take over. And that story is about how she convinced her kids not to watch TV. It's a story I've shared with so many people in family, friends, everyone. So it goes like this that, when TV came, obviously her kids also wanted to have a TV in the house. Neighbors had it, everyone had it. And Norma told them that you have two choices. So either you can, go to all these beautiful places, see the nature, see wildlife, see, experience different things, or you can sit at home and watch TV. I'm going to let you do just one of the two. And obviously, kids being kids and being smart, they chose to travel and they chose to do that. And then Norma not only had them come onto the bandwagon, but everyone else too. So the way, I mean, I think it takes a lot, there's a certain power to actually, one, being able to convince your family about anything. At least that's my experience. And the other is, to make kids convince others that they're cooler because, oh, we're not watching TV. We are going and, actually seeing all of these things. So do you want to join us? Do you want to come to this beach? So yes, Norma has this ability, and probably no wonder she's so good in the court too. So Norma, over to you. Lovely to have you here. And this will not be the first and last time we harass you. So that's a
Well,
warning.
with that promise, I don't know whether to start saying my opening line, which was "Thank you so much for inviting me," because you're just going to take my thank you seriously then and be back here. But truly, it's a lovely idea to have a green lit festival and to also not select one prize winner, but to give it to several. I mean, some of the best, because in today's world, we do not want a single, we do not want competition, cutthroat competition, let's put it that way. We need to know the best of what has happened, but the best can be several. And so I was truly delighted when Pooja said to me that there will not be only one, there's no one winner, but there are other winners as well. And she sent me, as a green lawyer and as a green activist, because I'm sometimes in the courts and sometimes on the streets. And in both these areas, you do realize that literature, that stories, that proverbs, that sayings can influence people a great deal, because sometimes what you try to tell people in a didactic manner, this is right, segregate your garbage, do this, do that, does not impact as well as something told maybe in a comic strip, maybe in a cartoon, maybe in a story. These are all means of influencing people and conveying the ideas that you want to give across. And if we are trying to project green, then literature, and as I said, comic strips, I think that's a form of literature also. I know a very good friend of mine who does wonderful comic strips and literature. So all these are very, very useful and helpful. I had a look at some of the titles which were sent to me. And while I was not quite able to reconcile with Gun Island, because I don't know what that story is about, it didn't sound very green to me. I'm sure there must be something green in it. But I certainly could resonate with the two titles, Cities and Canopies and Animal Intimacies, because both these are things that are very close to my heart. You know, I can also see on the screen here other titles, which every creature has a story. For example, it's an animal book. There's The Wild Heart of India, there's Wasted, there are Ganga, so many of these books. All these are on your frontline winners who are conveying something which is green. And I find it very, very heartening that people in cities are now fighting for a green canopy. They are no longer looking at infrastructure only, but they know and they recognize and they realize that you need the green canopy around you if you have got to breathe, if you are going to live a reasonably decent life. It's not enough to have the fast moving metros and the bridges and the overbridges and the underpasses and so on. You do need that green canopy. Along with it is the conflict that you see with the wild as we in the cities take up more and more of their spaces and expand our cities, expand our towns, encroaching upon areas which were once the wild, the home of the wild. Not only the wild, even domestics. In Goa, where I live, there is this whole new thing of gated communities coming up. We all lived in, we still live in cottages and houses and we have gardens around us. But gated communities want to keep out dogs, want to keep out cats. Now, this is a place where these creatures have roamed around. So you got to come to terms with it. You cannot simply say that now I have decided to build my home here and so you get out. Because they don't understand your language and this only leads to conflicts. So both these issues, the green and the animals, are undoubtedly connected and intertwined and mixed. And I think as human beings, we must realize that we are really not at the apex of creation, much as we like to think we are. We're not the only ones who have got minds, who have got hearts, who feel for our young, who bring up our children. There are all the other species. If you read around, all these creatures, all the animals, trees, everyone are all part of nature. And if you're part of something, you negotiate and you recognize how you are going to live with each other. So the old idea that, well, we are the conquerors, we are the people who will dominate, I think it's long gone. There are still a few people who hold on to it. Perhaps they have not read any further. Perhaps they don't want to expand their knowledge. Perhaps they want to live in the past, but not the present. The present generation, I think, recognizes that we are a part of nature, not just because we are telling them this, but because nature is showing this to us. We can see how the COVID took us all into a huddle because, well, we couldn't do anything about it. So that was nature. You can see how the storms and the rainfall, which is in Goa, has been incessant for the past 8 months. It's not stopped. The cyclonic storms, this is all nature talking back to us, saying you are a part of nature, respect nature as well. And I'm very heartened that in Goa, for example, over the last year or year and a half, we had young people who formed themselves into a group called Amche Mole. It is our Mole. Mole is a wildlife sanctuary and national park. And in this wildlife sanctuary and national park, the government had decided to construct 3 infrastructure projects: a highway, the expansion of the railway, and a power line. 3 of them cutting the wildlife sanctuary in 3 different places. The wildlife sanctuaries occupy so little of the area that is home to us otherwise. And even that little corner, small area, not even 4% of the whole country, you are not willing to leave alone for the animals. You still want to take a road through it. You still want to take a train through it. Where do they go? But the young people of Goa, people in their teens and 20s and 30s, students, teachers, lawyers, doctors, tourism officials, everyone signed up to say, don't do it. So much so that it reached to Delhi, and the Central Empowered Committee of the Supreme Court came down to visit Goa, looked at the area, and has given its report. One project rejecting, one project modifying, both the others modifying. So this is heartening for young people to fight for a wildlife sanctuary, which they may not go to. They are got their plans to become whatever, maybe travel abroad and so on. Yet they realized that this is important. It's a sign of hope in this otherwise sometimes despairing situation where I am in the courts trying to fight this and that. So, well, with this, let me say how glad I am to be here, how honored I am to be invited, and I do congratulate the winners of this Green Lit Festival, and I look forward to many more to come. Thank you.
Norma, you will have to announce the names.
Yes, I do.
Yes. And alongside, they'll show a slide also so that people can see the books and the authors.
All right. So how do you let me know who are the winners?
You have that in your email, but I will help you. I'll just...
You may need to... Well, I'll look at my email, but I...
No. I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you. Just a second. Or maybe what we can do is, why don't we just directly put up the slides? Yes, that's a wonderful thing. Yes.
So, the winning books are, do I say Cities and Canopies, Trees in Indian Cities, and the authors are Harini Nagendra and Seema Mundoli. Congratulations for this wonderful book. I hope I will read it. Maybe that's a complimentary copy I can get from Pooja for having agreed to be at this event.
Absolutely.
But it's a good title. I hope the story in it is good. And yes, we do need trees in Indian cities. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I think we can turn on the videos of all our guests, please.
Well, Mr. Amitabh Ghosh is a very, very well-known writer. He lived in Goa for some time. I don't know if he still has his house here or he's gone back, but his writings are always very gripping, very beautifully crafted. I have read his previous novels, and I'm sure Gun Island will also be a success. I see a snake there on the title, if I am not mistaken, with flowers around it. So, well, this book, the title intrigues me, but congratulations, Amitabh Ghosh, for yet another feather in your cap. And I'm delighted to find that Radhika Govindrajan's Animal Intimacies has also merited a place in the prize-winning list. I see the Beastly Love in the Himalayas. So there is, well, beastly love is kind of, two opposite terms, because when you use the word beast, you almost think the animal is a cruel, vicious creature, and yet here you have Beastly Love in the Himalayas. Radhika Govindrajan, congratulations for being among the finalists and the awardees of this Green Lit Fest.
Congratulations, everyone. And, just because, I mean, in an offline setup, we all would have clapped. So I want all the team and everyone to at least be able to come online. Let's just give them like a wide round of applause. So Ganesh and Arcade, please can you turn on videos at least of our team? I think it'll be tough to do that for the whole audience. But
you got to do something like this, I'm told. That was the last, to show your applauding appreciation.
In fact, my bad, but Benedict had already suggested that, we should at least, have the team be seen so that we can give them a nice round of applause.
Yeah,
so come on.
I've come in.
Yes,
I don't know whether I can be seen.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm here too, Pooja.
Great. So I want to hear it. We are here to clap.
Yeah,
so let's do it.
So
yes.
time it, Pooja. Call for. Okay.
Just to give us a little bit of the offline effect in this very online festival that we've had to have thanks to the pandemic this year. And so Norma, the good thing is the wedding you had to go for is tomorrow.
Yes.
So, and the best part of that is that whether it's Gun Island or whether it's the Beastly Love that you're curious about, when we have the jury speak, you'll find out, why those books are called what they are.
True.
They'll definitely throw light on that. And obviously, why all of these books were liked so much, right? So, yes, now, time to introduce all of you to a wonderful, wonderful jury, who has read all of these books and I think pulled some hair in the process too, from what I'm told. So, yes, can we just have at least the, pictures of the, shortlist so that I can talk about what the process was and then, how they kind of weaned through these wonderful books to pick out, the ones that finally came. Yes, yes. So this was our shortlist. It had Aranyaka, which is also by a very well-known author, right? Devdutt Patnaik is. Amrita Patil's, what do you call it? Illustrations are so well-known. Then you also had Every Creature Has a Story by Janki Lennon, right? So this was our shortlist. And then from that, now we already know the names of the winning books. We'd given them very simple criteria, but also something we thought was pertinent, which is originality, style of writing, and ease of reading. How futuristic the book is, whether it can be a game changer, a major influencer, and whether it can be inspiring for readers, right? So this was largely a criteria. And Jairam Ramesh was already there in the previous session, so I'm not reintroducing him, but let me introduce all of you to Zai. So Zai Whitaker, those of you, most of you would know her, but for those of you who might not, she comes from a family of naturalists. So including her father, Zafar Fateh Ali, who had started WWF, and WWF happens to be a partner. So that's, two hoots. And her uncle was Salim Ali, the ornithologist. So obviously, there was so much inspiration already. And her life, work, everything has been dedicated to that. She in fact lives and works at the Madras Crocodile Bank, which she, and her husband are founder trustees of, and ex-husband, and her, interest in conservation, in teaching, all of that, nature, animals, that has been the thread, and although she, so she, on ground, this is her work, but then a lot of her books are also, for children. She has taught at Kodaikanal, and in fact, she's even taught at Kodaikanal International School, and she's a principal of Abacus Montessori Chennai and outreach schools in Bangalore. She has authored over 20 books. Most of them are for young readers on environmental issues, and they include, and these are very interesting names too, Andaman's Boy, Kali and the Rat Snake, and Zyrus the Virus, which was an ebook. Such a cool name to have, Zyrus the Virus, even before COVID came. All right. And hi, Neha. Very nice to have you here as well. Actually, I couldn't see Zai's face. Maybe my view is such. Zai, can you please turn on your video and audio?
Is she there?
Yes, she's right here.
Okay, so
Hi.
She is.
hi everyone.
Hi. Yeah. So Neha is the business head of RoundGlass Sustain, and she and her entire team, this is their, what we're trying to do at GLF. That's exactly what they're trying to do through their stories on wildlife and different habitats at RoundGlass Sustain, and also build very passionate communities to support conservation. My interaction with her was when she was actually more of an editorial person and not so much a business head as she is today at RoundGlass Sustain. And she's been a travel editor at some of the best travel magazines and publications too. She was the deputy editor of one of the world's most loved travel magazines. My lips are zipped, I'm not allowed to say names. So I'm going to let you guys check her out online later about that. And she also did a lot of work around sustainability before she got into RoundGlass Sustain, so she did that kind of initiative with a couple of media publications, and she tried to create awareness among travelers and among businesses about being thoughtful while traveling, with respect to environment, with respect to sustainability and all of that. And besides that, she's just wonderful to work with, and she's a very fun person. So yes, with that,
thanks so much.
I think I'll kind of stop with the introductions and really get you guys talking about what it was like to be jury. And one of the things, because these are books that came out in 2019 and 20, right? So one of the things I've been really curious about is, how many of these had you already read? Like, how many of these on the long list or short list had you already read and you were already aware of? Because because of the pandemic, we decided to take on 2 years, publishing was slower. So yeah, please start. Zai, Neha, who's going first? I'm leaving it to you all.
Yeah, so I had actually read 2 of them.
Yeah, I mean, there's such wonderful books, Pooja. And, in fact, that was the challenge, because really good books and also mixed, right? Just throwing both fiction and non-fiction in there together was like making life really challenging for us. But excellent writers. So many of the books I had encountered before. I think other than Aranyak, I'd read 3 of the books and started on the 4th. So it did make life a little easier judging them right now. Though, of course, I did go back in there and reread them.
Yeah. Well, I would also like to add that, a couple of years ago, I did a book review. And after it was done and published, I got this letter from the journal saying, please send the book back. And I was terrified that GLF would do the same and take away these books, because there's certainly all of them, and especially these 3 books that I would like to have on my bookshelf, because they're books that one wants to read again and again, parts of them. And so all three of these books, I felt, I mean, at the heart of a good book is good writing and a good story. And these three certainly have those two elements. Cities and Canopies, so many interesting tidbits of information and perspective about trees. I think one of the blurbs at the back of the book by Gopal, I think, you know, he said something along the lines of, after you finish the book, you want to say to trees, thank you trees for being what you are and where you are, or something like that. And when I read that and reread the book, I thought, well, I would also add, and who you are, because that's what the authors have done. They've made the trees feel so close to us, but without sentimentalizing it. And that is quite a challenge. So I really enjoyed that part of it. And all the little bits of information, Hazari Bagh being Hazar trees and not Hazar people, and the way a large tree saved flood victims in the big, I think 1908 floods in Hyderabad. So that I remembered from my earlier reading, but really, really a wonderful book, and a book that I will treasure. And Animal Intimacies, likewise, wonderful writing, wonderful stories, and so much to think about. I was just talking to myself earlier about, you know, the importance of a couple of things that she's mentioned in the book. One is the difference between kahani and baat. That is such, you know, an interesting concept. And the way she has brought out the wisdom of the people who really live on the ground with wildlife, with biodiversity. And if only we as conservationists could sort of absorb and think about some of those wisdoms. For instance, at one point there's a conversation about dogs and leopards, and how sad it is that leopards come around the village and eat the dogs. And a lady who herself had lost a beloved dog said, it's very sad that this happens, but this is their relationship. This is the relationship between leopards and dogs, and who are we to break that? And I thought that was such a beautiful statement. And then Amitabh Ghosh, of course, every time I start an Amitabh Ghosh novel, I sort of, in the first few pages, I start feeling sorry for him, because I think he's not going to be able to pull it off. He's just introduced so many characters, so many subjects, from mythology to history to politics, so many issues. And this time he's not going to be able to do it. And so many places from, I mean, this book goes from the Sundarbans to Venice to New York to God knows where else. But as usual, he did pull it off, and it's a tremendous book. So, you know, three wonderful, wonderful books, really.
Yeah, and I think Amitabh Ghosh really stands out, you know, amongst all the exceptional books that we read, because of also the way he mainstreams conversations around climate change, around unusual habitats. Sorry, I'm a little croaky today because I'm under the weather, but you know, he brings in things like
climate change.
Yeah. He brings in climate change. He brings in habitats like mangroves into this conversation, you know, so deftly that even someone who's not wanting to engage with these subjects, not really interested in them, will feel impacted by them. And I think that's like the work of a master, how he executes that. But Zai, there's a very interesting thing that you mentioned, which I even wanted to ask Harini and Seema about, if I may. There was a common thread that I saw between the two other books, right? Between your book and between what Radhika wrote. And that was this interesting emphasis on non-human kinship and non-human relationships, right? Whether it's trees or animals. And I think that really stuck out for me, because as people who are creating content, storytelling, when it comes to India's wildlife and biodiversity, we do sometimes start thinking of things as groups and units and species, and we do not really think of them as individuals. And that's something that Radhika's book really emphasizes. And in your book too, you talk about how one of the things to do is to get to know a tree around you as an individual. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that, about those kind of individual relationships.
Go on, Harini. Start. I'll add in later.
So thanks, Neha, thanks, Zai. Thank you, everyone, first of all, for the Green Lit Fest. This is a real honor, and we're very, very pleased, to be here in this excellent company, because I think the long list, the short list, and the honor list has just been wonderful books. So we feel very privileged to be in this group. You raise a very important point, Neha, and I think as educators, Seema and I also, because we teach at a university, right? So we teach many young people, and often issues of conservation, of sustainability are what we call dismal disciplines. You end up otherwise, you feel very defeated, especially if you're young and you know the kinds of challenges that you're going to face. I think the kind of generations, the kind of world these young people in their 20s are going to grow into is going to be a very difficult world. So we often are looking at what are the positives that we can leave behind, because otherwise, writing dystopic books about nature, we often feel dystopic, like many people do. But then how do you get something engaged and positive? So kinship to the world, I think, is something that we can really learn from many indigenous communities, to many people even in cities. And that is really something that we wanted to bring forth. For me, it's a fine balance between anthropomorphizing a tree, because it is still a tree and it lives like a tree, or an animal, lives like an animal. You don't want to put your own human image on them, but yet they're alive and they communicate and they talk, and there's magic in that. So how do we do that? So I think Seema will tell you about the trees that she loves, but for me, one of my big favorites is, there is a tree which is, a local community say it's 350 years old. It's close to my house, which is on the fringe of Bangalore. And a large highway was going to take the tree away. But the tree has a god, and the village consider that a very important tree and a very important god. So they were actually able to work with the highway to get the highway relocated to save the tree. Where do you find something like that? So we go sometimes and just spend time under that canopy. That tree is just magnificent. And if you think it's seen Hyder, it's seen Tipu, it's seen the warrior kings before them, it's seen the British, it must have seen so much history. So that's really special. How do you think of a tree and its wisdom, its collective wisdom, without really understanding the limits of human aggrandizement, or human, you can want to dominate the world, but you're ultimately not going to be able to dominate the world. So I'll turn it over to Seema.
So yes, thank you again. I echo what Harini says. This is a wonderful Lit Fest, and it's nice to be in the long list, short list, and finally in the honors. So thanks a lot for that. And yes, I do agree with what she says about teaching students. I had become really cynical after working for quite some time. But when you teach, you can't be cynical. So you have to have some hope. Otherwise, there's really no point teaching students. So that contributed a lot. And we do these exercises with students around trees in our courses, where we actually see students who have never looked at a tree suddenly get interested about it. Because it's not just about identifying a flower or a leaf or a tree. We tell them, go find out from the local people how they see the tree. What do they use the tree for? Or find out what are the cultural uses? How do people associate with it? And I've seen that, as they call it, the bulb moments in our students, when they just light up because they have found something very interesting. And for me, it has come if I associate my life, I know there are some trees that I have always treasured. So there was this jamun tree in the university campus. I grew up in Visakhapatnam, which is there even after Hudud. That's one of the first things we checked after Hudud. Is it still there? And that was there. There's another tree outside my house in Bangalore. Every morning when I'm leaving for the university, it's a gular tree, Ficus racemosa. There would be these people who would be going around it, touching their head to it. And I was very curious. So this is all happening around, and sometimes, and I was just wondering why we had never noticed so much of it. There's a personal experience, but it's not just our experience. The whole world is engaging with trees. So that was something very fascinating, and I guess that's what led to this book. It's a lot of our own lives in one way entwined with what has happened. Yeah.
Zai, do you have a favorite tree? I'd love to know about it.
Do I have a favorite tree? Yes, I think I have two. And the first one is a childhood tree, a big banyan tree near Alibag, where we used to go for our summer holidays. And it was maybe about at least 200 years old. It was just one of those trees that's like a city, you know. And it was a very useful tree because whenever our mean cousins were fighting with us and chasing us with sticks and so on, we would be able to climb that tree and hide. And so it was really very, very useful. And the other tree is a jamun tree that we have here at the Croc Bank. In our garden, and that tree has just been through so much. Every cyclone, including that 2004 tsunami, every storm that comes along, the wind and then the water logging. During the tsunami, it was like 2 months of salt and then brackish water. And that tree made it, and I'm so grateful to it, and I just love it so much.
So it's surprising. While there are several, one of the trees that I love was also jamun. So I thought I'd quickly mention it.
Okay.
It was one of my first homes away from home in Bombay when I first moved out for work. And those purple stains on the pavement meant home. It meant that I had got there. It has the most luscious fruit that I always die to pluck, but it was just a little bit out of my reach, so I never had the courage until the first time my father visited me in that house. And then between the two of us, we figured out how to do it. So that was pretty incredible. But one of the things that Zai pointed out, which was pretty interesting, and you mentioned it as well, Seema, is that trees are so entrenched, right, historically in our lives. They've been a part of livelihoods, they've been a part of society, of culture. And you mentioned some pretty cool entrenchments in the book as well, right? Zai already alluded to several of them, but I'm sure you both have your favorites, right? From trees that have stood witness to centuries of history or have been life-saving trees, or even culturally, how you talk about the leaves of the neem tree being essential to celebrations of New Year. So just one each, your favorite entrenchment.
In fact, in the last chapter, they say something along the lines of, this is all a kind of some word like idiosyncratic account, a mixed bag. But then I was thinking, actually, it's not. You probably really had to pick and choose, and you've done a really good job with that, because each thing is just so interesting and it all comes together so well. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted you.
So which one of you is going first, Harini, Seema? Seema?
So what I remember most is the drumstick and its use of roots as a horseradish that the British used as a replacement. So I found that really, because I never thought drumstick would have such a use. I remember reading it and being very quite curious to know
That was actually pretty cool, right? I mean, amongst other things, it's also this idea of trees that you think of as typically Indian trees, actually not being Indian trees, but having come from outside. And then, trees that are very Indian, but how they got used by other people who came to idea. I think like these little stories and anecdotes really make the book very engaging. Harini, your favorite story?
Mine would be my banyan, because the one of the things I thought of a lot. One of the people I thought of a lot while writing the book was my grandmother, my mother's mother, and she had such a lovely garden. I can remember everything. But she was in Salem, and once we were bringing her, she wasn't well, so we were bringing her, for medical treatment to Bangalore, and she was sleeping most of the time. But then we passed these gorgeous highways, and you know how highways used to have banyan trees, and now most of them have gone. But she stopped, when she was not well. She got up and she said, "Go and cut some of those roots," because my hair was not. She thought it was too thin. And then she said, there's this recipe that I have in there, which is basically boil the banyan roots in oil. And she said, your hair will always keep growing like the roots of the banyan tree. And so this is something I always remember. If I see my grandmother and I think of that, I think of my grandmother and I see a banyan tree and the roots, both the love and affection that, they think of this whole idea, when you're talking about trees and relating them to human beings, that your roots, just like the roots of the banyan tree, your hair will always keep growing.
So did your hair keep growing?
My hair is, so I never made the oil. I mean, we didn't make it regularly, and no, but now I make hair oil for my daughter with a number of different herbs and plant parts, and her hair does grow here. So
her hair is very long and lovely.
Okay, so it worked.
Yeah. So Harini, Seema, one of the reasons I wanted to talk about entrenchments is also because, that's changing, right? There was a time when planting trees was a sacred responsibility because you realized how entrenched they were in your lives. And that's changing. And there's this point in the book where you mentioned that when we stop looking at trees as how central they are to our lives and only start thinking of them in terms of utility, that's going to start spelling the end of nature in our cities. And how do you see this? Like, I'm sure you see this happening before you, right? You see this manifesting already. So just talk about the good and the bad, I suppose, of how this is happening around us. The seeing of trees only as utility, and then, of course, the efforts of others to change that point of view.
Yeah, so I mean, I think a lot of this is related to climate change discussions, and we often tend to think, I think the focus on climate change has become such a focus on carbon. And so you think planting trees is useful because they give you ecosystem services, which are sort of valued in numbers, and then you should plant trees everywhere. And in fact, I was just reading a very interesting article which talks about the fact that when you do that carbon accounting to plant trees, often then it becomes more profitable to cut down an old growth forest and plant new trees because they grow faster. And therefore, theoretically, they accumulate more carbon, but you haven't even done your carbon accounting carefully. Or let's say large scale projects, and we all know which ones they are, where government try to take over rivers and plant trees across the wetlands and rivers where they shouldn't be. So I think there's a lot of danger in thinking of trees very utilitarian, because then you come back to eucalyptus and acacia and fast growing trees and plantations. And really we need to be thinking of ecosystem and the right place for the tree and the right habitat. What can the tree talk to? Is it the animals, the ecosystem, the whole ecosystem essentially? And that, to me, that's one part of it. But on the other hand, also practically living in the city, when you try and tell planners, it's very useful to talk about carbon and ecosystem services and the economic value of trees. When you talk to the court, it's very useful. So I'm afraid I myself use different language when I'm talking to different people. To me, the language that appeals is that of the heart. But yes, it's very useful to use this economic language. And Seema and I both use it in reports liberally.
So that's actually something I wanted to ask Zai, with your experience and background and having engaged with people in all levels of, policy, decision-making, writing. We talked about looking at trees as individuals. We talked about looking at trees as how entrenched they are in livelihood, society, and culture. Is there a way to bring that language of valuing trees in non-monetary, non-economic terms into decision-making and policy-making?
I think it's very important, because I think everything, both the pragmatic part of it as well as this, because as we all know, the story is a very, very strong driver, you know, so it has to be there. And I think I've seen many occasions when it has worked, you know, like petitioning bureaucrats about various conservation thing, and then you throw in some incident or story and immediately the atmosphere changes and there's a certain kind of engagement. So I would say yes.
So there's a question for you, Harni and Seema, in the chat, which I'll just bring up right now. And it references something that Zai said earlier and asked that, was it easy to keep sentimentality out of your book since you felt so much for trees?
Seema, you want to take that?
Yeah, because we were very clear about what we wanted the book to do, in the sense that it had to be hopeful. It had to be also say something, like you said, a bit futuristic. You know, we're thinking, when thinking of trees, we're thinking of the future and what it holds for the next generation. So if we went down the route of sentimentality, then we could not have done that, because it would all be of what we had lost. But we wanted to look ahead about what the possibilities that could be done. So I would say that we didn't have to really work too much on that, Megha. We could do that. Harni, you want to add?
Yeah, also I think that we were very conscious that we wanted to have a book that was based not only on facts, but definitely very strongly on facts. And we wanted the research to shine through. And the research, we defined the research very broadly, not what we would write for academic papers, but at the end we do write academic papers about trees also. So I think that gave us, in some sense, the grounding to go around and do these other explorations. But we kept coming back to what can we say with confidence, what is published, what is known, and that helped a lot.
I think also writing at many different levels is very helpful, isn't it? I mean, both of you being teachers, I'm sure must know that. And also using students as guinea pigs. I just think that's just a wonderful, sly thing that I did all the time, you know, threw things at them and then waited for their response. And it was so useful because children are so honest. No, miss, that's a very stupid idea. I don't think that's going to work. And so you put something aside. And so, yeah.
Today we had a very quick, just don't want to take too much time, but we had this class of undergraduate students, and the exercise we given them was, it's 2070 and the world has solved the problems of climate change. It's an ideal world.
Okay.
What is your ideal world then? How did you get there? And their whole pathways of how they got there, and then the discussions afterwards of how much they believe in that pathway or the likelihood of it or not, was fascinating. It gave us so much to think about.
Yeah.
So, since we're talking about students, I'm going to slip in a question, which is a little bit like me asking for something I can do at home, because I'm the mother of a 3-year-old, right? And at various points in the book, you talk about the importance of having impactful experiences in nature. You talk about nature deficit disorder and how in particular it can be harmful for children. And Harini, even in your dedication, you talk about how your love for trees was handed down over generations. So very simply, as a mother, how do I hand down a love for trees to my child?
I just go play a lot. I mean, one of the things I remembered a lot was just gulmohar leaves. I mean, gulmohar, the sepals, making nails for them. But the other thing I used to do with my daughter a lot is, we have this bauhinia and the seed pods, go in this curly way. So we do that every time when it falls. We for about 3-4 weeks we go and jump on them, and it makes this crunch noise. We still do it. She's much older, but we still go and find a time when no one is around and jump. So all these silly little things, make jewelry, make paint on people, leave skeletons, all of these things. This is what the fun is, I think, in going into it. Seema, you want to?
Yeah, I mean the gulmohar is definitely one of the things. But I remember when we were kids, these soap berries that you get, we could put the safety pin back on the soap berry, and then you blow it, you would get those bubbles. Not like the bubbles you get with the soap, definitely big ones, but it was basically just plucking and using it. I remember doing that, spending afternoons just repeatedly sitting and doing that, playing with the flowers of the plumeria. We had a plumeria tree in our house, and a specific location where we could sit and read comics and fold the flowers to make, endlessly sit and do that. So it was just basically touch and feel and do a lot of those collecting seeds. I have collected seeds from so many places, and it's any interesting seed just comes into the just pick it up, keep it, and then look at it.
So, Seema and Harini, there are two more questions for you from the audience. One from Norma is about, she's curious to know if these are your first, if this is your first book, or you have both written something previously. There's another question, which actually I think I kind of know the answer to, but I'd love for you to speak about it, which is that lots of places in Bombay are named after trees, Laburnum Street, Jamunwadi, etc. Have those kind of stories made into your book? Having read it, I know they have, but please talk a little bit more about that.
So maybe I'll take the book one, because if I can show you, this is briefly, so this is my first book, which is Nature in the City, Bengaluru in the Past, Present and Future. And this is actually more of a research book, less of a really a book for the public. And it was based on a lot of research about Bangalore's ecological history, and with the aim of writing it for a sort of an audience which reads literature and something more complex. And that was so much on Bangalore, and I found lots of people were reading it with great enthusiasm, but there were many others who said, look, I like the book and I want to know more, but it's heavy. And then Seema and I started talking about what can we do for people who don't want to read what they call heavy books, because you have to connect with people. And then we started with the idea of doing a Cities and Canopies version, but only for Bangalore. And then we said, what do we do? A book for Delhi and a book for Bombay? You can't do that. And then along the way, it evolved into Cities and Canopies. But hopefully from this, we have written another book that's all about leaves, basically. And it's for children. It's a Pratham Stories book. And it's basically about how some leaves are large and small and, bitter and sweet and hairy and sticky and all of those things. And so again, through that, we hope to do many more of these kinds of books. Now that we've seen that there is an interest in this kind of work, we hope to do more of these kinds of
books. Thank you. I wanted to know that. I'm sorry I'm not current with the latest in literature, but you see where I am. So I had to ask this question about nice to know.
Thanks. Seema, you want to talk about them?
Yeah, so we have mentioned in one of the chapters about the tree, the naming of different parts. I think Bombay, especially one of the stations, is also named after the tamarind. Chinchpokli, one of the Chinchpokli, I think it's Chinch is tamarind in Marathi. And
yes,
similarly for every, yeah,
it is Chinchpokli.
Yeah, Chinchpokli. So Chinch is tamarind. So we sort of tried to allude to different cities and roads, which are named. Chennai has Veperi, which is neem. Vepa is neem in Chennai. So we've tried to, bring in that across the country. In one of the chapters, I think it's a chapter on groves, urban groves.
Okay, so just I guess we have.
Just a second.
Sorry, Pooja, please go ahead.
Funny thing is that these streets are named after those trees which used to kind of be abundant in those places, and today you don't see them. And I'm thinking about Neha's question there about what should you do to hand down, that relationship. First is to just make sure those trees remain. So.
Yeah. One thing, what should you climb trees?
Yes.
We're now trying to find out all the trees in Lal Bagh and Kaban Park that are easy to climb, and it's just that's one of the best things that one should do with kids.
Yeah, I mean, every kid deserves that childhood tree whose branches are a safe escape, right? So
yeah, but you don't need to make a conscious effort to hand down your love for trees. If you love it, if in the family you do it, children watch it. You telling them it doesn't impact as much. I mean, they listen and they won't say anything to you, but if they see that you are enjoying something, the curiosity gets aroused, and one may take to trees, one may take to animals. All can't be exactly like we want them to be. So they have their individuality, but mainly it's a question of how much you enjoy yourself. And that itself conveys to children. I was also intrigued by her question. I said, I must share a bit of wisdom that you don't need to tell people, do this. I mean, it's like, if you are kind in the home, children get the idea. If you are slapping everybody around, they believe that you can slap the dog, But it's up to us to show how we respect animals, nature, etc.
Yeah. So I remember in one of the talks, a parent walked up and said that my child is always sitting in the tree. What do? I say, excellent. The child is sitting in the tree. Please let him sit. He's not coming down. He just sits. I don't know what he does. This is the best child in the middle of all the wants to sit on a tree.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
No,
great.
earlier, sorry, I'm Megha. So earlier I asked this question about sentimentality because I have a very sentimental relationship with trees. I don't, I think we had spoken about this earlier, Seema, that, when you go out, and I am sometimes, how do I say, not able to speak my mind to people, and I really need to speak it. So I go and find a tree to, unleash my emotions quietly, even though people around will be like, she's a mad woman. But I just need to share with someone. And I've done that once or twice. So I think it's really an achievement to keep, and especially the kind of experiences both of you have had, which are so personal. And, Harin, you spoke about your grandmother and your hair being compared to the banyan. To keep sentimentality out of, text which you feel so deeply, even though, I mean, both of you are educators, really is something very remarkable about the prose in this book. So, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm just repeating myself, but I read two books at the same time, one of which was written very sentimentally and with a lot of sentimental, prose. And then I read yours, and it was just amazing to see the variance. Sorry, Neha, and sorry, Zai, I'm just butting into this.
No, that was great, Megha. So I thought we could wind up with one question from Pooja, which I thought was really interesting. She wanted to know about books, favorite books in terms of accounts of trees and how they've been depicted. I can set the ball rolling. While there are many, one that I really liked recently was because of the kind of demographic it was meant for and the kind of book it was. So it's this book called Hidden Children, which is a young adult, fantasy fiction kind of book. And there's a tree, a beautiful grand tree right at the center of that narrative. And it makes that tree so cool because, when you just think of it from the point of view of teenagers who are interested in cool fantasy fiction, and then just bringing a tree into it, I thought was really amazing and was very deftly done. So that's something that stood out for me in recent times. But from both of you, Harini, Seema, and Zai, Pooja, I'd love to know about your favorite trees in literature.
My very old one is Secret Garden, Francis Hodgson Burnett, which also, the description of India bothered me deeply. So I'll say that. So, but setting that aside, this garden was just so magical. Yeah. So
I think Bridge to Terabithia also, because it's so much about the forest, and trees play such a big part in the story, and it's just one of my all-time favorites. So I would say that.
I am not able to think of anything because I guess I spent most of my childhood on a tree, and so it's I really did reading books on one tree in my house. So I can't think of any specific book, doesn't come to mind right now, but yeah, anything on trees has been interesting in any book, whether it was a central or not.
Anyway, so I'm
Yeah.
going to be hoping that you two will next write some children's literature around books, something aimed for toddlers, since mine's going to be in that age group. Pooja, I think you might want to step in at this point. We may have gone a bit overboard talking about trees.
Yes. Well, at least it's a very good thing to actually go overboard with. So I think no regrets there, especially at this festival. And yeah, one thing to Megha, well, considering we're in a country where we even marry trees, I think talking to the tree is not so bad. In fact, Benedict had a question. Benedict, he's a founder. So why do some people tie threads around trees? I don't know the answer, but I guess it's meant for you guys anyway. So maybe we'll, take that as the last question for today, and then yes.
I was just typing a response because I wasn't sure we would have time, but it's really a worship thing, and often it's a fertility thing. If you especially go around, in areas where you have a ficus tree, especially near a temple, and women tie threads around it, it's often a fertility. It's a request for a child, but otherwise it's all kinds of worship.
Interesting. Yeah, well, one never knew. It's a good thing. I think people are going to use you like a, tree Google. Like, Harini, what is the answer to this? Seema, what is the answer to this?
Yeah, so it's childhood, also married women for some puja.
Yeah, they pray for long life for the
Long
husbands.
husband,
Yeah, I know.
Savitri
In Goa,
Vrata
they
or
do that.
something. It's around that Savitri.
Yeah, they do it. They tie around the banyan tree, but
yeah, red color. There's also a color code for it.
I suppose red is always an Indian favorite color.
And then often you do marriages for trees. So I don't know if you know that, because you marry a neem and a people, or a neem and a banyan, and then there again you tie the threads. But that's again supposed to be something that you do before an auspicious event in your family to create good luck. So multiple things.
Very interesting. Well, so I think this was genuinely, I think, in fact, in all my bios, one thing I like to say is that, like, trees the way people love their pets. I was never allowed to have pets, so that never grew as a love, but this has been it. So it's only fitting that, on a day that I've curated things, and in, this list, it's this, and the conversation has been all around the very thing that I love. So I'm just so glad that we have a space here to have this conversation. So as for, just wanted to, kind of say a little bit on behalf of one, we're definitely missing the authors who've not been able to make it. Mr. Ghosh has not been able to make it because of some personal reason. So since about, I think 15 days to a month, he's kind of not been taking any public engagements. And with Radhika, I mean, it's just kind of sad because she would have made it if she's literally flying on the days of the festival. So she literally, like, she's in the US, she stays in Seattle. So she said, I'm flying Puja on the 8th and I'm reaching on the 10th. So all 3 festival days is what she's covering in that flight. So that. And Mr. Ramesh, he was there for the previous session, but I guess, because Parliament sessions are on, and they have some party meeting, which he was not able to. But I do want to share something that he shared with me. And I think Neha and Zai will both relate to this. So just a second. Yeah. So basically what he said to me is that, Pooja, I've judged these books, but they're not comparable. Like, it was that. It's like, what task have you put me up to? These, like, you can't be like, I mean, it's very tough. So basically that is the sentiment that he shared. And that's why I said both of them, because I remember Neha and I were coordinating about something else too. And she's sharing a very similar sentiment.
Yeah, it's very hard. I mean, for example, if I look at the books that are in the honor list today, right? Like I said before, Amitabh Ghosh's book stands out for just the way he deftly makes all these difficult subjects that people don't want to talk about part of this story that just takes you along. And, I was reading the book the second time and I was still as engrossed in it as I had been the first time, right? Harni and Seema's book is so accessible and makes you just want to walk with your head up looking at trees instead of at the ground. Radhika's book was a lot harder for me. It is a deeply anthropological text, though it is beautifully written, but it was so eye-opening and, just made you look at the world and animals in fresh ways that I think will stay with me for my work for coming months and years. So just looking at these books as one and trying to compare them was extremely daunting.
Yeah, and I remember Zai, I think she had these moments, she was reading and she said, Pooja, I can't put this book down. Pooja, I can't put this book down. I remember the messages, and
I think at the heart of it also is good writing, right? That undefinable or indefinable, whatever that word is, but just good writing is good writing, and all three books have got it.
Yeah. So I want to share something special with respect to now that, we've discussed all of this. Obviously we've already congratulated all of you, but we'll also show you the certificates that we put. And there are some stories around this too. So I'm going to share both. Yeah. So this is a certificate, and we're going to send it to all of you, all of you winners. So, this is something, and, maybe this is something that we're going to send you, and this is something but what I did want to share is that we had asked, one of a Zambian artist, Norma, you were there, in that session, that Zambian artist was there.
Yes, I was.
So we had actually asked him to put together, a very nice certificate for us. And he had agreed, and he was already working on it. And you won't believe what happened. He got arrested because he was protesting to kind of, save, there was a protest for bats with respect to conservation of bats that they're trying to do, because that's an issue out there. And he was in police custody, so he was not able to send in a certificate. Exactly. Gosh. And which is why I wanted to share. So we did, put this together eventually without him, but that was the original plan, that, we have something signed by him, because he's a beautiful comic artist and, has done wonderful work. And for the very kind of spirit of what we're doing here, although we don't protest, we're a literature festival, he was spending all those days, like I didn't, at least for 3.5 days, I was wondering, that guy's not suddenly like off radar, not responding, what has happened, lots of panic. And then I finally found out what had happened, and he was really kind of traumatized by that whole experience. So just everyone's been so connected to, the kind of work that we're doing. And the other thing I want to tell you is the search of the right paper to actually print the certificate on. So Megha, again, credit to her, was very keen that it has to be 100% recyclable. And it's not easy to print on 100% recyclable. So finally, I was talking to different vendors saying, okay, what are our options? And we found this very nice paper. It's called cotton rag. So it's made of waste cotton, essentially. And we found this vendor in Bangalore. And they're able to make lovely paper, which prints really like, when you have your certificates, you'll see it prints pretty much like your normal paper, not so much bleeding and all of that. So we're very excited about also the material it's being printed on. And great. Yes, so that's with the stories. And you'll be getting a trophy also. And there's a cash prize of $500,000 for every winner that we managed to put together. So with that, thank you, everyone. And thank you for making it so wonderful. Thank you for writing the lovely books, because of which a festival like this is possible even, right? So yeah, thanks all of you. And
thank you for bringing so many books together. This has just been lovely.
Thank you. And before we go, let me just thank all our partners. RoundGlass has obviously been very supportive and very spontaneously so. And I won't even say RoundGlass, I'll just say Neha. So she's fun, but she's also very generous, and she has been in her support. So I definitely want to recognize that. Yes. So here are all our wonderful partners who've been supporting us in different ways. There's WWF. So Zai here is your WWF Connect, and India Climate Collaborative, Terry, Ashley India. We've also had a wonderful contest by Books on the Delhi Metro. Then obviously we've spoken at RoundGlass, the Earth Club, Funky Rainbow, which is going to actually send like we're part of the proceeds of the festival, like whatever that we got from paid people, from people who registered through the paid forms, will be going to Funky Rainbow so that the winning books can go to different community libraries. So that Tamala is actually our gifting partner, and they're the ones who are going to create the trophies for us. And then there's Environics. So yes, these are all our wonderful partners. And yes, so something Neha will not let me forget, although I wouldn't have anyway. We have a lovely, lovely, this is not the last day of the festival. We have one more day to go, and that day is dedicated to children. So please be there tomorrow. Neha, you have kids, bring your kids on. Everyone who has kids, who knows people who have kids, who knows teachers. I actually sent it to my principal also. She doesn't recognize me as much after all these years, but still done that. So we have a wonderful lineup. And I think the beautiful thing about tomorrow is that there are, and this comes actually also from suggestions from Zai, that we need to involve kids more in actually the conversation about kids. So we've had a jury, which had a children's jury, which Neha has found a little crazy to deal with, but the cat's out of the bag, but we've still pulled it off. And we also have them in a discussion, so it's not every day that where you're talking about children's books, the children are also involved in the process. So we've tried to do that at the expense of Neha going a little crazy, but I think there's a little bit of crazy in everyone here. So I think that's okay.
No, it wasn't crazy. I think it was very interesting. And we did have some adult jury advisors as well. But yes, it was quite interesting for me because it's the first time I'm dealing with a children's jury. But yeah, thank you, Pooja, for the mentions. Clearly, I've been making your life very difficult.
Absolutely not. I'm still
by dropping constant reminders. But yes, I'd like to say if you have children or you're interested in children's publishing or anything, I'd say please do tune in for the Bacha Party tomorrow. As I'd like to call it, because there's a whole lot of kids and there's a whole lot of hearing from their mouths. So yes.
All right, everyone. So hope to see you again tomorrow. I'm not saying bye-bye. There's a word in Gujarati, it's called aujo, that means come again. So come again tomorrow and every month to see us, to chat with us, and to give us feedback and keep us going. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Nice meeting all of you. Bye-bye.
Nice meeting you too. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.